Ashkenazy is a VP of Product and GM for APAC for XM Cyber, an innovative cybersecurity startup developing a revolutionary breach and attack simulation solution capable of identifying critical attack paths towards key organizational assets while providing actionable, prioritized remediation. So over to you, Heidi.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. All right. Actually, Danielle, your presentation was a great intro. All of you kind of spoke a bit about all the opportunities hackers have with IoT. So I'm going to dive a bit deeper into that, not from a really technical perspective, but just to give you kind of a glimpse into the hacker's perspective. I have many years of experience in offensive cyber, so this is how we think. So if we talk to an innovator about IoT, they will say, visibility, flexibility, data aggregation, all the wonderful stuff. But hackers have a more sinister approach to those kind of innovations. And when a hacker thinks about these things, this is kind of what you're hearing as a hacker. Like, okay, so I have billions of connected devices. They're not monitored. They're rarely updated. Nobody even thinks about them as computers, right? It's just light bulbs or cars or whatever it is. And they can also be managed remotely a lot of the times. Nobody spoke about the software as a service, but all of those wonderful light bulbs are usually connected to another company, which wants to know how they're operating, wants to maintain them. It's also an infection vector. So for a hacker, this is like the best dream ever. All right, so what are the main problems for the actual enterprise? I'm not talking about, I'll not talk about the private sector that much, more about the enterprise. So enterprises have the wrong perception about IoTs. IoT is not part of the network. If you ask an IT administrator, they will tell you, I have my Windows network, I have my Linux servers, maybe I have some private cloud, public cloud, whatever it is. They never think about those devices. Nobody thinks even about something like a router. They know it's part of the network infrastructure. They don't consider that as something that is a hackable computer with considerable processing power and a definition and task for moving bits back and forth, which is exactly what hackers are looking for. Then again, you have the asymmetrical battleground. IoT vendors are really private companies. They want to make as much money as possible. This is very legitimate. They're not security companies, and they haven't been in this evolutionary race that has been going on for years. So if you take something like, if you take Microsoft, for example, people used to like to bash Microsoft for security in the past, but they have amazing way of security teams today. If hackers want to find vulnerabilities in Windows today, it's increasingly more difficult. But in a completely new product that's out in the market that has time to market, that's as easy as a default admin password or simple vulnerabilities. And hackers have their existing modern tools, but the IoT vendors, they don't have any security controls right now. So it's really up for the taking. So essentially, if you're an advanced enterprise, you have all those IT devices deployed in your network, essentially you have a shadow network within your network. And it's not about what I or someone, a hacker, can do to those devices. Again, going back to the light bulb example, you can turn it on and off, but there's so much more you can do. It's a computer within the enterprise's network. That's the real opportunity in my mind with those kind of devices. So let's take a short walk to the dark side. So this is the trivial example, the external denial of service. Danielle already spoke about this, the Mirai botnet. This is the classic. This is what everybody thinks about when they're thinking about IoT security. I'm going to skim through because we have discussed this already. Also, you've seen this before. Some other more interesting examples in my mind. One of the key challenges for hackers, I don't know if you realize that, but hackers don't want to get caught. They want to hack and make money, and they want to buy nice cars. They don't want to spend time in jail. So stealth and protecting their own identity is key to their operations. Now, this is RouteX is a malware from about a month ago, or even less, I think, in which a certain hacker used a vulnerability in Netgear routers to not only try and do what's called credential stuffing, never mind about that, but he tried to cover his identity by jumping from router to router to router before actually trying to attack the target. It's very, very hard to backtrace someone if he's using malware on home or network or enterprise routers. Now, probably you heard about the problem hackers have with gaining the initial foot in the door. It's not that much of a problem, unfortunately, but IoTs present a huge opportunity in that sense as well. So again, when you think about an IP camera, for example, so people show you cool examples, how they hack into the camera with the default admin password or something like that, and then they show you images from that camera. That's really, really cool. But the cooler thing about it, or the bad thing about it, is that this camera is a computer within your network. I have a foot in the door. I'm in the enterprise, and from that point on, I can move to the really interesting assets, which are the computers in your domain, your servers, your data, everything. Hackers are not necessarily interested in the data generated by the devices, but they're interested in the devices as unmanaged, unsecure, unmonitored devices which have a leg, so to speak, technically in your network. So IP cameras, industrial control systems, HVAC. Like, who thinks about HVAC as a way to get into a company, right? But I had this meeting with a company, and they told me about their process with HVAC, and apparently the maintenance guy has this software, and he logs into the HVAC systems from home, all right? So if you have control of his computer, you can get to those systems, and those systems are actually in the network operating system center of the entire enterprise. So if you have access to those, essentially from there you can get to the entire network of the enterprise. Nobody thinks about those things except for hackers. Now, in the enterprise itself, and there's not enough time to talk about all the things you could do, but here are some of the advantages hackers have with those kind of devices while they're already inside the enterprise. So first thing is persistence. Endpoint protection products are pretty advanced today. It's hard to maintain persistence on Windows machines, on Linux machines. Well, it's harder. It's not hard, but it's harder today. But keeping this persistence on a router, trivial. Nobody looks for that. Have you ever heard about endpoint protection for a router? Doesn't exist, right? Nobody can find it. Nobody's looking for that. This is a huge advantage for hackers. Command and control. Tons of tools. If you look for security controls, you'll find tons of tools looking for the way bits are moving in your organization, right? Like they will look for weird IP addresses and all kinds of anomalies in the network. But is anybody looking at the kind of the bits that are moving between your cameras? Does anybody care about that? No. Again, huge advantage for IoT. No monitoring, no security awareness at all about those kind of things. Lateral movement. If I have, again, I'm taking always the example of the camera, but if I have, some kind of presence in your network on a network-enabled device, and I can talk to other computers, it means it also opens the door to all the existing man-in-the-middle attacks. I can try to fake who I am, try to answer to other computers and say, yes, I am your proxy, please talk to me, I'll do everything for you. All these kinds of attacks, very possible with IoT. Yielding. This is the part where we actually use the IoT device. Again, cameras, or most famously recently, I don't know if you heard about the WikiLeaks, the Vault 7 leaks, where the CIA combined forces with the UK to provide implants for Samsung smart TVs. Why? Well, first of all, because they can. And second, because these TVs can record audio. They have a microphone. So you can use IoT device to yield data directly from that. It could be audio, video, it could be all kinds of interesting data. And finally, exfiltration, which is kind of similar to command and control, but again, it's an amazing way to take vast amounts of that data out of the organization without anyone noticing it, because nobody's monitoring the amount of data that's leaving your router, for example. Thank you very much.